Want to know what your dog is thinking?
Have a challenging dog behavior you need help with?
The Dish on Dogs is your source for all your canine questions.
Improve your relationship with your dog and deepen your understanding of your furry friend. Right here on the Dish on Dogs. Welcome, everybody. Welcome to the Dish on Dogs. I'm your host, Mike Gould, affectionately known as the mayor of Hounds Town, USA. Hounds Town is expanding. You know, we're coming out of, I hope we're coming out of this COVID thing, and we're developing our Hounds Towns all over the country very rapidly. So that puts a pressure on us to make sure that we're servicing our legacy stores, all the different people. We work hard to do that. Today, I'm joined not always, but by the lovely Jackie Bondanza, president of Hounds Town. Thank you, Jackie, for joining.
Thanks for making me do this.
That's not nice. Okay, so last episode, I had the pleasure and privilege to talk about my connection with the NYPD Canine unit and the evolution. We're always talking about how dogs evolved, right? From wolf to wild dog to domestic dog, and how we are always trying to utilize dogs for the good of human beings, right? And we kind of left off with, now we got emotional support dogs and service dogs, therapy dogs. It's really I think the pendulum has swung too far, frankly, but we'll talk about that. So we talked about my relationship and my very good fortune to be at the right place at the right time when I could connect to one of the pioneers of police dog training, and that's Don Sterling. As you know, he's a friend of the show. He's been on this show, and I do put him on a pedestal, and I put him up there with Temple Grandin, the two equals. I think he's ahead of Temple Grandin in many ways because he's walked the walk. He doesn't do things theoretically. We spent hours teaching dogs to track on cement, and we almost got run over by a train in Mineola because we were tracking people on it. Anyway.
I digress. Okay.
I digressed.
So what's this show going to be about? Let's start with that.
The show is going to be about, we talked about how dogs went from wolf to wild dog to domestic dog. Then the dogs went from the backyard in the doghouse onto the porch, and now they worked our way not only in the house, but into people's beds.
Right. And I think so. We always talk about we obviously everybody loves the benefit of that, right? The emotional connection we have with dogs. There are drawbacks to that, though, for the dog, in the sense that, like you always say, the dog brain hasn't evolved. There's still a dog at heart. So there are still needs that the dog, that we need to meet as the owner, right? As the human. Yeah. Because the dog still has natural instincts and needs things like to interact with other dogs in a natural pack environment in order to feel well-balanced, in order to be well-balanced and kind of live a well-balanced life. So, and to do what we're asking of them, right? We're asking a lot of dogs these days.
It's too much. It's like asking a 3-year-old child or 4-year-old child to be the guardian of your house, to cook for you, to clean for you. It's impossible. They don't have the physical or mental capability of doing that, nor do dogs. Can they fit all of these roles? So what we talked about is my experience with the NYPD Canine unit and being fortunate enough to be geographically close to this fellow Don Sterling, who I see as a pioneer or somebody who didn't follow conventional wisdom. That's when we evolve as humans, when we challenge conventional wisdom and say, well, let's try this. So that's how we fly. The Wright brothers defied conventional wisdom.
Okay, so Don Sterling takes the NYPD dogs, right? The canine handler dogs. And we talked in the last show about, he got them into a group. So this introduced you to the concept of grouping dogs, which is, of course, the entire basis of what we do today at Hounds Town. So let's talk about grouping and how that makes kind of us as a system different, the benefits to the dog for being in a group.
Right. So that experience taught me that conventional wisdom doesn't apply, because these were highly, in one situation, they seem very aggressive. in the back of their police car or when they were doing their job, but yet when they went home, so they were very docile with the family and so forth. So how does that? So we never breed discriminated, right? We never thought of a pit bull as more dangerous than a poodle. We never did. Our competitors always stereotyped and put dogs in compartments or
because I think they don't have the knowledge.
They don't have the
experience that you have had.
Right.
So you understood from the beginning, if you're starting out taking police canines and grouping them, and these are German Shepherds and otherwise, bully breeds,
right,
and you could see that experience happen for them, then it can happen for any dog.
Right. So for years, I examined why it was so, because not every dog is suitable to interact. So I would never say all dogs can just be thrown in a room and it's not going to be a love fest.
Well, there's a science to
this.
There's
a science to it. And what I had learned, again, was subtleties, eye contact, a dog. What is he looking at? What is he not looking at? What is he avoiding? What is he focused on? How is his overall body language, his demeanor? Right to the breath the dog makes. And we teach this to people. Is the dog's mouth open or closed? This is minutia that's so important to whether or not a dog is going to interact well with another dog.
So we spend a tremendous amount of time focusing on teaching franchisees and their employees this during their initial training period, that first year or two they're in business, and learning to really connect and be able to have that skill, right? To read the dog properly without having to breed discriminate.
Completely. And one of the things we learned to do is making that knowledge transferable.
Yes.
And this was a point of contention actually with Don and I sometimes, was that is this knowledge transferable to another human being? And of course, all knowledge is transferable, whether you're a brain surgeon or a heart surgeon. The question is how transferable, how easy. And I think what we have done as a brand, taken that knowledge that we've had with commercial dog training, and we've taken that and introduced it now to a way that keeps it simple. So our training process is so simple. And we watered it down to a point where when people just relax and do certain things that we ask them, it's always possible.
Right. And I think it's an art to be able to tune into you have to, like you said, relax and kind of connect the energy of the dog, right? And that's not a tangible thing that you can go in and teach people how to do. Some people are better at it than others, but for the most part, for what we want to succeed at every day at Hounds Town, which is to invite dogs in and give them the experience of being able to play and interact in a small, specialized pack. That the knowledge is transferable enough that people are able to achieve that. They're able to have 70, 80, 90 dogs in their building in 5 or 6 specialized play groups.
Right. Because one of the things we highlight, we're not training dogs.
Right.
So we're not asking dogs to teach them to find drugs, teach them to bark, or none of those things. We're just allowing an outlet for the fun of the dog brain. So again, it's very transferable. And you're right. So look, some people, unlike me, like children. They like children, right?
I don't know. 3 of them, so
right?
I guess
Don't
tell them you don't like them.
They know how I feel about them. They always have. So the point of the matter is, but some people just gravitate towards children, right? You see people, they'll say,
they're naturally good with kids.
Yeah, kids love me. I love kids. So that's what we teach humans. We try, but it is intangible sometimes. And sometimes people get it, sometimes they don't. Sometimes we'll find a staff member that gets it. And that's really all you need. You don't have to be all of these wonderful things. So the question always is can we take that? We allow dogs to be dogs, right? Birds have to fly, fish have to swim. It's Mother Nature tells us that, not...
Right, well, we always say dogs are litter, they're born into a litter, right? So they're not born like humans for the most part individually.
Absolutely.
They're born into a pack of 5, 6, 7, 8 other dogs. So they're naturally pack mates.
Of course.
So they need so when they come into our facility, we do something called a temperament evaluation. And the way that we do that is really rooted in, your entire history on how you started to group dogs in your canine career, right?
Yeah. And the temperament test, by the way, it's kind of funny to watch our customers come in because they make an appointment to come to a temperament test and they think we're going to give, I don't know, IQ tests. We're going to ask the dog to read a book. And the temperament test lasts probably realistically 10 seconds.
Right.
If
the
I took
important part, the most important
the
part.
most important part, well, the first part is the dog aggressive towards humans? So we know that by virtue of the dog coming into our lobby. The second thing is the dog. How is the dog going to react to the presence of another dog? And they're going to tell you that in seconds, not weeks. We don't have to see if the dog climbs steps or any of those things. It's not relevant. And we know, here's the really part to me that is really kind of amazing. We know that in humans. If you took a 3 or 4-year-old into a group of 10 other 3 or 4 years, you're almost going to know instantly. Or you're going to get an idea, is this kid shy? Is he this? And the same thing happens, and I like to point this out, universally throughout the world. So kids don't speak, 2 or 3-year-olds don't have sophisticated language or sophisticated motor skills for that matter. But we can take somebody from any country. You can go to China, anywhere, the Middle East, and children give them a puddle of water and a soccer ball.
Right. And they'll connect with one another naturally. And that's what we're going for with the dogs here.
That's what we're going for.
So many dogs I see when they come in, they are naturally drawn to when the other dog comes out, right? Their tail starts wagging. They kind of get excited a little bit because they see it. Imagine being a dog and you live with another species.
Right.
Like you never get to see another dog. Like you're taken out of that environment when you're born into and placed basically on like an alien.
Right. That's a great
planet.
way of putting it.
And then so when they see another dog, they get super excited because my God, there's another dog.
Right. And they don't even right.
Yeah. So then when they get to go into the groups, it's just amazing to watch when the groups are built. And I think we need to talk about how do we build our groups? Right. How do we successfully group dogs?
Right.
That should be our next
so
segue here.
Right.
But when they go into the groups and they can just kind of play and run around, that is where they truly come out of their shells.
Yes. Again, analogous to children. The problem is dogs are eternal 3-year-old, 2 or 3-year-old children. We as humans, our brain is evolving, our thoughts, our emotions, our intellect it's good, I guess, but it's also very conflicting to a dog. So you quite correctly said, if a dog grew up with a pack of dogs, they wouldn't have this reaction. But many times, humans keep the dog home till it's a year old or 8 months old or a year old, and frankly, like you said, some dogs never even seen another dog, right. or in the context of having fun.
Right.
They may have seen another dog walking outside their house, and then they became territorial and aggressive.
And I think that's a big problem that a lot of our customers have is that their interaction with other dogs is super limited. Yeah, and it's reserved for like leash walking, which is a whole other challenging aspect of stress and how we have managed dogs, which we obviously don't, we don't like leashes. We don't.
It's not like we don't like the leash. It's unnatural for an animal to be tethered to somebody. It's unnatural by any law of nature, right? You wouldn't have a lion. You wouldn't walk a lion down. It's just unnatural. So when you restrain something, we talk about tension on the leash. You literally transmit tension. When you hold a dog back, that simple behavior of holding a dog back transmits to the dog that something's wrong in what they're looking at.
Right. So then if they're looking at another dog
and you pull back,
this is where we get into leash aggression, and a lot of times that is misread as aggression towards other dogs, right? Yes. So then the human says, well, my dog's aggressive towards other dogs. He can't come in and play at a Hounds Town because they've had this experience of walking the dog on the leash aggression, and then they make assumptions, right? So we see a lot of customers come in that have dogs with leash aggression, and if we're able to overcome that, when the dog gets into the group, he's a totally different dog because the leash is removed, and that circumstance is non-existent for the dog here.
Absolutely. And that's how simple it is. So humans complicate matters. We're complicated creatures. That's our brain just complicates everything. That's great if you want to make music, make videos. But in this case, it's toxic on the dog, because this, like you said, your simple behavior is a self-fulfilling prophecy. So let's say your dog is barking out the window at the mailman or something. We now label that behavior as he's aggressive towards people or other
mailman,
animals,
yeah.
or another animal, whatever it is. So now they come to Hounds Town, and when we can create a situation, an environment where there is no tension, the dogs flourish. And so we talked about grouping dogs. We first do a very initial temperament test, and it's not an exact science, but we understand the dog behavior. And then we put him in a group, or we build a group around him, depending on his personality. Some dogs, like people, are just social butterflies. They'll get along with anyone, anybody. That's just the way. But they're the exception to the rule. Most dogs come with some set of fears and phobias, just like children going to school for the first day. Some are bullies, some are very social, and some are very quiet and shy. So it's up to the teacher not to play games with the children, but to understand what child is what. And if they're a good teacher, a good kindergarten or nursery school teacher, they'll understand the behaviors of an individual child. They're not racist. They don't care about their ethnicity. They shouldn't even care about their gender, any of these things. We don't care about gender. We don't care about any of these things. We want to make sure that the dogs interact in a positive way, and they take something away from it.
Right. And so we have specialized groups, I like to call them. So we have, every one of our facilities has a minimum of 5 play areas. So our groups are smaller. We're grouping not only based on size, but we're grouping based on temperament, personality, energy level, play style. And these are all things that are discovered, like you said, as the teacher, which in our business means the employee, the Hounds Town employee. Their job is to know all of the dogs that are already in our facility, to watch their personality every day, to look who they interact with best. And then when a new dog comes in, to be able to assess what group that new dog might do well in.
Completely.
And like you said, if it's a shy dog, he's not getting thrown into a group with 30 other dogs. Right. He's getting put in with one other dog, then 2, then 4, then 6, until he's confident enough to interact with 10 or 15 dogs, which is the max that our groups are ever. The size of our groups, for the most part. Right,
for the most part. And again, it depends on the size of the dog, the energy. There's a couple of other elements that we put into that. But like you said, it's and as everybody should know, we're data-driven. Hounds Town is data-driven. So I'm not making theoretical comments. I'm not writing a book where telling you should be able to put 20 dogs together and everything is fine. We do it every single day to the point we're up to 1.5 to 2 million dogs that we've done this with. So it is a soft science, but it's possible to do those things, and we demonstrate it all the time. And we take so many things into consideration that most people just wouldn't even think of. And when people come to our training, we're having some training coming up soon, and I have to take their human brain off and really let them follow our process. And I'm so proud of the fact that we can transfer this knowledge. So over the years, our system has evolved, and once we set our groups together, we allow dogs to be dogs. As offensive as it may sound, we let dogs hump, jump, and dump in the comfort.
And that is literally what they want to do.
That's what they want to do.
Could view into the window, the playrooms every day, you would see that they just have a lot of fun interacting with one another. They don't need much. They need fresh water. They need someone to come in and clean up after them every half an hour. And then they have their own little thing going on all day long. And they're relaxed. They take naps when they want. They play when they want. It's really funny and interesting to see the dynamic that they create themselves when you take the human out of it.
Thank you, Jackie. You're so right. And this is what separates us from our competitors. We don't read storybooks. There's no story time. We're not teaching the dog to sit and stay. We're not spraying them with water bottles. We're not clicking a clicker, giving them a treat to sit. This is ludicrous. It's insane, but that's what we do different. Our business model proves it. We're not perfect. No one is perfect out there. We try hard. We give 100% to our efforts. And that's what we ask of our clients, our franchisees, our employees, 100%.
Right.
Whether you achieve the 100% is one thing, but you should strive for
You
it.
should always try.
Always try.
And we always want to give every dog the opportunity to be a dog here. It's, we've had dozens of stories of dogs that have gotten kicked out of our competitors. Then they call us sometimes in tears. I mean, I can remember a story from years ago at our Farmingdale location, and a customer called them in tears because her 5-month-old puppy, 5 months old, had gotten turned away from another pet care facility without even the dog didn't even have a chance to get an evaluation. Right. This woman walked in to the facility with the dog. The employee of the facility said, that dog looks like he's got some pit bull in him. I'm sorry, he can't come here. And the woman was so upset. It was this tiny little cute puppy. And then she called Hounds Town. The dog's been a great customer for 5 years. Not one problem.
We have so many stories about that. And as I said, that's labeling. And it's a self-fulfilling prophecy. So when these dogs are analyzed like that, then you take it home and you start to believe it because you think some nut that told you this in a pet store or even vets, very frankly. Vets aren't animal behaviorists. They're vets. They take care of the anatomy of dogs. So you got to take these things with a grain of salt. We just had a most recent one, and I forget the location. I forget if it was Detroit or someplace, but their previous daycare, or not even daycare, just boarding facility, required them to bring their dogs in on muzzles, with muzzles on.
Really?
I forget. I do. We can research this for the next show.
That's crazy.
The point of the matter is they obviously didn't. And I think they were just boarding the dogs. And in a couple of minutes or hours, the dogs were playing.
Right. So I don't know why it's like acceptable to discriminate against dogs. It's not acceptable to discriminate against humans. So why is it fair? Why is it fair to do that?
It's stereotype. It's ignorance. It's ignorance of something, right? So, I mean, we deal with it all the time. And I don't like to imply that our customers, because some of our customers do feel that way, very frankly. We have customers that have golden retrievers or something, and they're very nervous about the P word, I call it.
Right.
The P word, the pit bull looking dog. It's ludicrous. It's just a misunderstanding. And I take all the time in the world to try to explain or demonstrate, more importantly, the misunderstanding about it. A dog brain is a dog brain. A human brain is a human brain.
Right.
You can't.
It's about the influence, just like it is with humans. It's
Social
about the influence.
Yes, Jackie. There's no
other societal things.
As I said, yes. There's not a black brain. There's not a Muslim brain. You can take a human brain. They're all the same. Same thing with a dog.
Right.
Really, they're very closely attached to the wild dog or wolf.
Right.
And not much has changed. And the problem is the human brain has mushroomed. The dog, they're the same as they were thousands of years ago. There's very little.
They have then the same needs. And now that we've domesticated them, we have an obligation to focus even more on that than ever before because we're expecting them to live in our world, but we have to make sure that we're meeting their needs. And one of the best ways to do that is obviously to bring them to Hounds Town, let them interact in a specialized pack, and they will have the time of their lives.
Right. And it's not self-promoting to say we do it differently. So just walking a dog, so sometimes people have dog walkers that come. Yeah. Just walking a dog on a leash is a completely different experience than being in a pack of other dogs.
Well, I think like we always say, we use the analogy of children in kindergarten classes. So it's like taking your child out for a walk, right? They still don't get the interaction with other children. They need to learn from other children. They need to interact. They need to build social relationships.
Yes.
Same example. And it's not the physical exercise. That's not the only thing that's a benefit to a doggy daycare. It's really the bigger benefit is the psychological exercise.
Right. Right. So our challenge is to educate our pet owners. So people say, oh, no, he doesn't need doggy daycare because I go for a 5-mile walk around the neighborhood every night when I come home. A 5-mile walk for a young dog is nothing.
Right.
They play from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. So it's not even comparable. Yeah. You'd have to run a marathon every night with a dog to get the same benefit.
Right.
And you're not. Even that, as you quite correctly said, you're not getting the animal experience.
Right. Well, they're missing all the social
They're missing the social aspect of it. So, So we pride ourselves on that. So there's really nothing like Hounds Town. I mean it. It's again, go to our website, houndstownusa.com. Testimonial after testimonial. We don't make this stuff up. So two things are not always the same. A doggy daycare, going to a dog park. To me, you're taking your dog's life in its hands. Not maybe that's a little exaggeration, but they're
relying on the fact that other people are essentially grouping their dogs for you. Yeah, not to mention the health concerns.
The health care. You got to listen to these psychos tell you what they know about dogs. They don't know what they're doing.
All right, we got to wrap it up. So
yes,
any
Jackie?
parting words of wisdom about grouping, dog grouping?
Dog grouping. Yeah, we do a good job at it. The statistics, the data supports that. Our customers support.
Quick note to say, of course there are injuries that occur, but they're very, very minimal. Very minimal.
Of course, but if you don't understand that children wrestling on a wrestling team, jiu-jitsu, football, soccer, they're going to get dirty. If they don't get dirty, they didn't play much soccer or football. Can they sprain an ankle? Can a child? My grandson gets bloody noses, concussions. He gets hit with baseball. He's accident prone. Do I then isolate him and say he's accident prone, so I'm never going to let him play any sports? No. That's it. We do these things. We put ourselves in these situations all the time as social beings. We're social beings. We need to be out amongst. We're out there. So there's dangers. There's risk. And there's reward. So
the reward outweighs the risk. So
right. So the question comes up. We talked a little bit earlier about what people see and the connections they make. So if they see a dog barking out the window at dog's movement, the human brain comes to an extraneous conclusion that the dog's aggressive. Of course, how come? Because he fights with the neighbor's dog. How about we see fence fighting, right? You put your dog in the backyard and he fights along the fence. So therefore, we come to this conclusion that the dog is aggressive. So when people ask, how do I know? You don't know. As long as the dog hasn't been overtly aggressive towards humans, which means he hasn't bit a human, and bring him to a Hounds Town for a no-cost temperament evaluation, because we're going to understand what happens in your house. I just had this conversation with a woman today. At her house, the dog goes crazy. When somebody knocks on the door, she hardly can control. They're two big dogs. You know where they are today? Right here in Hounds Town. You know what I asked Sam when I came in? How is Bacon and Blue? And she's like, they're fine.
Because they're used to... What happens here is different than what happens, way different than what happens in the home. But there are additional things that can be done in the home that we recommend to control some of these behaviors, like not allowing the dog to perch up on a couch, not allowing the dog to bark out the window. There are ways that you can control that in the home that will make it easier and more manageable.
Completely. And the simple answer, as I tell people, and it's not, if we can do it, you can do it.
Right.
It's not theoretical. So if the dog goes to your home and demonstrates all these behaviors, that means you probably allowed it to get a little bit out of hand.
Right.
They don't come to your house as a puppy and start jumping and barking out the window. It's an evolution. It's an evolving process. And we contribute, we meaning you, contribute to it. So you're really, and again, how do I say this in the most delicate, sensitive way? You're training your dogs to be that way. That you're training the dog. Inadvertently, of course. Yeah. So you're wonderful people, but inadvertently. Because we have humans here. This isn't a special planet we're on. We have 60 or 70 dogs right now. We have human beings. We have food not laying around, but they're all the same things you have in your house, we have in our house.
And we have our doorbell ringing,
doorbell ringing, people knocking on our window. That might be you too.
It's just like kids who behave in school for their teacher, and then at home they don't behave.
They're brats.
But there are ways to improve it. We have a top 10 list, which we'll send out after this episode, maybe. Top 10 things to do in your home to improve your dog's behavior.
Really, basically, leadership, consistency, and boundaries. If you started those three things the first day your dog came into your house, whether it's a rescue dog or a brand new puppy, those three things, consistency, boundaries, and the other third thing. But anyway,
we gotta wrap it up. Go. So check us out on YouTube, iTunes, and Spotify every Monday night at 8 o'clock. And we'll see everybody next week.
Joan Sullivan in Beverly Hills, not California. Good night.